There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Please be seated. Order. Honorable members, before we proceed with today's business, I wish to make the following announcement: that the vacancies which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Ms. T.M. Jumat Peterson, Ms. E.D. Peters, and Mr. M.H. Jonas have been filled by the nomination of Ms. R.C. Adams, Mr. J.J. Dube, and Mr. T.M. Mkonzo, respectively, with effect from the 12th April 2017. I still continue. The vacancies which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Dr. H.C. Volmink and Mr. N.A. Ramatlodi have been filled by the nomination of Mr. G.K.Y. Kachalia and Mr. S.H. Mbuyane, respectively, with effect from the 18th April 2017. The vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Ms. A.D.N. Kikani has been filled by the nomination of Mr. T.S. Mpanza with effect from the 24th April 2017. Lastly, the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly due to the resignation of Ms. T.R. Mabuda Fasi has been filled by the nomination of Ms. L.C. Teko with effect from the 1st of May 2017. I would like to extend a warm word of welcome to all of the honorable members that have joined the National Assembly. The honorable members, of course, have made and subscribed the oath and affirmation in the Speaker's office. Honorable members, the first item on the order paper is questions addressed to ministers in the Economics Cluster 4. And of course, honorable members, as we know, members may press the to talk button on their desks if they wish to ask supplementary questions. In case you have forgotten, you've been away for a long time. The first question has been asked by the Honorable P.D.N. Malloy to the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. The Honorable, the Minister.
Thanks for the question. Thanks. The question, as I see it, deals with whether we will be able to assist farmers that have been closed in the chicken industry. Let me say that, Speaker, there is a process that is led by the Department of Agriculture, the Department of DTI, and others to find funding to ensure that these closed production plants will be opened. Whether all the workers will be employed will depend upon the viability of the process, as well as the sustainability and profitability of those farms. The Deputy Minister will be visiting some of the farms so as to verify their viability going forward. We are committed as a department to ensure that we save jobs because we are concerned about the job we lost due to the brown meat dumping by the European Union and America. As a department, we believe that every job lost adds into unemployment. We are prepared, therefore, to do all that we can to reopen and make sure that they are sustainable going forward.
The Honorable Malloy.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister, may you please provide this House with the details of the comprehensive agricultural support program to grow the poultry industry in the 2017-2018 financial years? And in addition to that, are you in government investigating possibilities of acquiring the closed poultry farms? Thanks.
Yes, yes, Speaker. We as government, as I've said, there's an IMC that is led by DTI. The view is to look first at the competitiveness of the poultry industry. Currently, our poultry industry is not competitive because of the brining factor, as they could not open up other markets beyond South Africa. That's point number one. Point number two, the dumping of the dark meat into our shores has made it that our companies have to close. Since some of the companies that have dumped in our shores are being subsidized by their own country. As I have said earlier, that the Deputy Minister will be visiting some of the farms so as to do an understanding of what may be done. We are really committed to ensure that all the closed farms are reopened, hoping that those workers can be re-employed. As a government, yes, as a department, we are really committed.
The Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Honorable Minister, I think the whole issue of farm acquisition is also linked to the whole issue of asset ownership, shareholding by the farmers. And I understand that this matter has been going on for quite some time, because you find that most of the employees that were retrenched or lost their jobs in these farms had been contractual employees for a long time, which things should have been solved long time ago. Now, Minister, I want to follow up on the issue of acquisition of these farms by the government. And we know that there's a farm that has been having some challenges in Kato region, KwaZulu-Natal. I just want you to sort of appraise this House and update us. What is it that has been done with regard to that farm in particular? Because Rainbow Chicken in KwaZulu-Natal, in Kato Ridge, because many jobs were lost. Just update us, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, you have a right to take a seat while honorable members are asking follow-up questions, but go ahead and answer, Honorable Minister.
Thanks, Speaker. As I have said earlier, the government, or we have been instructed as the different department, including DTI, to do a study of all the farms that have been closed for a number of factors, including the uncompetitiveness, as well as the fact that dumping has really killed our industry. Therefore, the program is there to make sure that those farms are reopened. I think the other question is to how do we make sure, therefore, that those farm workers who have been working there are empowered to be owners going forward. We're looking at the 30% set aside of government, hoping that when those farms are opened, they can be able to sell to state institutions like hospitals and prisons. We're working on that program. And I think that a thorough report will be given as to how far we have gone. It is one area we believe we should do, because one job lost is one job many given the unemployment rate.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Paulsen.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Minister, you've just explained that the biggest problem that we have with agriculture and why it's dying is that our farmers are not subsidized, and they are competing with farmers that are subsidized by their governments. So we can never compete with the price of goods that are imported. So what are we going to do to strengthen barriers to importing cheap agricultural products? And that would also assist with beefing up production of agriculture here in this country.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thanks, Honorable Paulson, for the question. One of the problems is not limited to the fact that they are not subsidized. One of the key cost factors in inputs is the issue that we don't produce enough soybean, which is 70% of what goes to feed. We still import it. That places the burden on our farmers. That's point number one. But I think we need to look at the issue of competitiveness. I have said that if we can reduce brining, I believe that our chicken or our poultry can be able to enter some of the industries. But one of the problems is that this industry is so highly untransformed. It is one of the most untransformed industries. That's why, therefore, the workers have not been part of that. We are dealing with transformation. It is not something that you can do overnight. It is a process. But of course, as you do it, you end up being in courts. So I agree with you, Honorable Paulson, that there are things we need to deal with if only we to succeed. And even promote the production of free-range chicken. I know that you are a farmer of free-range. You understand what I'm speaking about. Thank you very much. He does understand.
The Honorable Filtane.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Minister, I believe there's 4 factors that were not given priority treatment, hence these job losses. My question to you at the end will be, what are you going to do about them? The operational methods of the enterprises. To what extent was government close to make sure that it will help sustain the jobs? The cooperation of the owners of the enterprises. What role did government play to make sure that they cooperated to save the jobs? Why was South Africa exposed to this dumping? And the use of technology, to what extent was technology used in order to make sure that we have got sustainable enterprises? My questions, all in all, are lumped in one to say, what did government do in order to save jobs, taking these 4 factors into account, which could have been utilized in order to save the jobs? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. Thanks, Honorable Member. When the American government imposed an increase on meat in bone, they went at 140 tons. It was due to our tough negotiations that we ended up with around 60 tons. But of course, that 60 ton was only from the US. We did not count other products from EU. So like most African countries, we have become a dumping field. Because in Europe, they eat the white meat, which is the breast. The other portions of the meat is exported to countries like ours. We negotiated strongly. If we did not negotiate, I'm sure the closure could have happened long ago. One of the areas is the issue that Honorable Paulson raised, that our chicken industry, like other industries, are not subsidized, and they're competing with countries in Europe who are subsidized. Is one of the areas we need to look at. But as to what we have done as government, as I'm saying, there's an IMC that has been set up, led by DTI, that must look at how do we salvage and save the industry, because those jobs are very important.
The next question has been asked by Honorable Matale to the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. Honorable Minister.
Small-scale fisheries, thanks, Honorable Speaker. Smallholder farmers are supported by CASP, and we have been able to sustain that support. But of course, we cannot claim to have achieved our goal. We are supposed to have reached 430,000 small-scale farmers. Our projection is to ensure that we grow that area, but that growth will be linked to the access to markets. We need, therefore, to work very hard to improve, one, the profitability of those farmers, of those farms, as well as access to markets. Some of them cannot be able to access markets because of the quality of their product. That is the area we're focusing in currently, to train them such that they're able to sell their products to all the other markets. But of course, they are faced with problems of competition. I'm sure we're aware recently that there have been a case that is being investigated by the Competition Commission concerning the unscrupulous way of working by agents at the Durban fresh markets that deprives our farmers of the benefit to sell their products at profitable levels. Those are challenges that we're dealing with. But we believe that as a department, working with other sister departments, we'll be able to create a viable small-scale holder farmers. But I must say this, that no farmer wants to be called a smallholder forever. Smallholder is a stage of development. All of them want to be commercial. There's a route we need to take, working together with them to improve them to be able to be commercial in the future.
The Honorable Matale. Is Honorable Matale in the house? There is no follow-up question from Honorable Matale, and therefore we move to Honorable Stein.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll also ask a question on behalf of Honorable Motale. I'm sure he won't mind. Honorable Minister, I have been listening to you, but unfortunately this whole issue of putting 1 million hectares of underutilized land into production has been on the program for the department since 2009. Won't you tell me why can't we even put 1 hectare under production then?
The Honorable the Minister.
Ndilusizi kuba Honorable Stein besinaye phezolo kwi-Fiscal Committee. Uyayazi into yobana sine-program. Enye yengxaki esinayo kwicala le-agriculture yingxaki yembalela ethi xa ifikile ingakhethi mntu oyi-commercial nomntu ose-smallholder farmers. But I can assure her that we have got a program that emanates from Operation Pagisa that envisages where commercial farmers will partner with the department. Remember, there is a program with the Department of Rural Development that looks at one family, 1 hectare. That program is to address the issue you are raising. So I agree with you, we may not have achieved what we have planned for, but the number of factors has been playing, as I'm saying, that were from drought, and when drought hits, it does not at least excuses or doesn't deal with small-scale farmers. But I can assure you, we are going to achieve the 1 million hectares by 2030, as explained by the NDP, and I'm sure we'll give you figures at the next portfolio committee. Unfortunately, I can't answer people who have not been appointed, because when they speak to me, I'm not obliged to answer them. They can use signals, but only those who can speak can use signals. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
The Honorable Dlamini.
Chairperson, Commissar Pauls will take this question.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And this is a more appropriate response to the Honorable Stein's follow-up question, Minister, so you must take careful note. The problem with farming in this country is that the agricultural sector is monopolized by 5% of the 37,000 farmers who produce 70% of the food. So why, Minister, are you scared or reluctant to subdivide large agricultural land to promote small-scale farming?
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank Honorable Speaker. Honorable Paulson, agriculture is not about cutting farms to give to others. It has a lot to do with it. One of the major costs in agriculture is the input costs, the knowledge base, the ability to manage. And our belief is that you don't have to kill the commercial farmers because you want to grow the small-scale farmers. We have to work in a way that both grows, because food security is key in this country. The answer, therefore, is to ensure that we grow the small-scale farmers while we work with the commercial farmers. But again, the program of land reform does not lie in my department. How I wish it was, so that I can answer your question properly.
The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Minister, it is common knowledge that we've had limited success in respect of the small farmers. The land that has been allocated to these small farmers with very little management skills, very little knowledge of running a business. And my understanding is the department was supposed to have provided them with all the skills and the training through an entire process to ensure the success. And to a certain extent, this has not happened. Can you tell us, Minister, what do you intend doing about putting in a mechanism in place to ensure the success of these small farmers in order to get them to grow? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. One of the programs we are coming up with is to ensure that unemployed agricultural graduates are organized and put together so that they can get experiential knowledge through being deployed into those small-scale farmers or in farms acquired by people who have been given farms through land distribution. We believe through that we can be able to ensure that those people, those young people will be able to work with those farmers, as well to make sure that our colleges of agriculture deploy those people to those farms. And we have got a program to deal with that. Let me agree with you that one of the shortcomings have been the ability to manage, as well as to make sure that those farms are run effectively and profitable. It's something that we are dealing with, Department of Rural Development, to ensure that unemployed graduates are being brought back. And also, we also promote mentoring by commercial farmers who are willing to come on board, provided they have a will. Because it's something else to deploy you to mentor somebody without you having the will. And at the end of the day, that person does not develop. It's something that we're looking at thoroughly.
The Honorable Carter. Then the Honorable Filtane can take that slot.
Thank you, Chair. What had happened actually is that I was seated here for convenience and press cutters. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Minister, I think a program of this nature with such a huge target, 1 million jobs, would require that one has got a progressive plan, like from year to year, so many this year and so on. Now, what is the frequency of the evaluation of this program in order to be sure that you'll gradually get to those 1 million jobs? And how many are there, so far? What is the year-to-year plan? And how far have we gone up till now in order to give South Africans a hope of a better future? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thanks for the question. One of the programs of the department is to use CASP so that we're able to allocate funding to small-scale farmers. Also to make sure that other hard issues like infrastructure development, that's why we speak of promoting agro-processing. And that's why we have been working on agri-parks led by rural development, is to ensure that farmers do not only get involved into primary agriculture, but all that they produce get processed so that value add can be done. We have got a program, and I know that yesterday we were together as well at the Ad Hoc Committee, and the report was given. Our target may not at all times be met, given the factors I have outlined. One of those is the frequency of drought, and also how to hone the knowledge and the training of our small-scale farmers. Hence, we believe that the redeployment of agricultural graduates back into those farms will assist us in a long way. And also, how do we make sure that we give them the necessary equipment and the know-how when to plant and what to plant under which climatic conditions. For instance, you cannot plant mangoes in the Eastern Cape when you know that in winter there will be frost.
We now come to question number 40, asked by the Honorable Mazzoni to the Minister of Public Enterprises.
Thank you very much, Speaker. The essence of the question is essentially linked to the Korenfontein mine, one of the first cost-plus mines in Eskom. Korenfontein mine was duly commissioned in 1968. It dedicatedly supplied coal to Kumati Power Station until it was mothballed in 1990. Upon its return to service in 2008, a contract was signed with the Korenfontein mine, which was then owned by Sianda and later Glencore. And this is the direct answer to your question, Honorable Member Mazzoni. This contract was concluded on the basis of a board-approved 2008 medium-term mandate, which is a mandate to negotiate and conclude contracts on a medium term from October 2008 to March 2018. Therefore, there were no tender process. In 2016, there was a change of ownership of the Korenfontein mine from Glencore to Tegeta. The change of ownership did not change the 2008 medium-term mandate. Intrinsic to the lessons of 2008 load shedding was to maintain optimal coal stockpiles, and Komati has a 10-day stockpile limitation against an optimal stockpile requirement of 20 days. Korenfontein mine offered Eskom the use of their coal stockyard to supplement the coal stock at Komati so as to increase the Komati coal stockpile to the required 20 stock days. The parties further agreed to reinstall the conveyor belt that was decommissioned when Komati was mothballed, effectively replacing trucking as the core mode of delivery. This would reduce the delivered costs of coal as well as address the negative impacts associated with truck haulage. In the award of the contract to Tegeta, Eskom followed its prescribed procurement processes which permit modification of contracts. The modification to extend the 7 billion rand contract was granted, and it was supported by National Treasury in this regard. Thank you.
The Honorable Mazzoni.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister. Minister, given the current appalling state of affairs regarding alleged scandals, state capture, nepotism, conflict of interest, and the likes that are rocking Eskom at present, I can't help but wonder who will be held to blame for not only tender processes that are not being adhered to, but also for the seemingly endless allegations of wrongdoing by the top management of Eskom. In light of this, Minister Brown, will the Minister agree to the suggestion that the CEO of Eskom, Mr. Koko, be suspended immediately, pending the outcome of an investigation into his involvement with these alleged wrongdoings?
The Honourable the Minister.
I think that's an entirely different question, but let me answer the question. At the moment, Mr. Koko has, it's entirely different to the question that you originally asked me. Because the original contract was drawn, or the medium-term agreement was done in 2008, and it stretches to 2018. So, in essence, Mr. Koko was not necessarily the person, and I'm not investigating him for this matter. At the moment, the board has approved the Cliff and Decker to investigate the allegations that have been in the public space around Mr. Koko, and I await the board's presentation to me, which should be by the end of this week.
The Honourable Dlamini.
Thanks, Chairperson. Minister, the PwC investigation, it shows that the current contract, this one that we're talking about, it's irregular. It's got a lot of mistakes and it was done in a rush. Obviously, we know why it was done in a rush, because of the Tegeta and the Gupta involvement. But now, and that happened under this current board. So you can't tell us about things of 2008. Under this current board, under this current CEO, there's concrete evidence that he has awarded his own daughter with tenders worth millions in Eskom, and he has not denied it. So in the issue of principle, don't you think that it's critical and it's important, because we're not just talking of a driver of Eskom, we're talking of a CEO, that this man must be suspended with immediate effect while the probe is still taking place? And also this board as well, because these things, they happen under the watch of the same board. Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker. The PwC report does not cover this contract. This is the 6.95 billion rand contract. The PwC report covers the Brakfontein Colliery, it covers the Manungu Colliery, it covers the Keaton Mining, and it covers Universal Coal. It covers all those 4 contracts. So the PwC report has nothing to do with the original question that I had to answer in this House today. Thank you.
The Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, thank you for your response. Now, Honourable Minister, last week the Special Investigating Unit appeared before the Justice Committee and indicated in its report that it was about to provide the President with its report relating to coal mining contracts going from 2006 to 2012, which would cover the period which you referred to. And in a response to my question, the head of the SIU unit also indicated that should the need arise, they could extend the investigation into SOEs in general, and they indicated that they are assisting in the SABC inquiry as well. Would you not consider, in the light of allegations on this particular contract, that it might be wise to ask the SIU unit to investigate whether there were any irregularities in the specific Koenfontein contract, given the concerns in the public domain, and given that, if my understanding is correct from National Treasury, whilst you indicated they approved it, but there were certain conditions imposed which might not have been complied with and which they indicated require a forensic investigation. What would be your response to that, Honourable Minister? Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I think you're actually speaking about different things. The Treasury approval that we received, that Eskom received for this particular mine, and the reason why this mine is particularly identified, because the Honourable Mazzoni actually says it's the 7 billion rand a mine. So I know that it's this particular mine that we are speaking about. The National Treasury supports the extension of the contract with no conditions on this particular mine. But let me deal with the issue of investigations. Because I think if there are allegations against, and PwC report does throw up a number of allegations, we would then have to ask the SIU to investigate. At this stage, there are a number of investigations happening in Eskom around particular matters that had documented proof that those are issues that must be investigated. Where the issues have documented proof, and we don't have to verify it still, we will investigate those matters. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Singh.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable Minister, my question deals with the competitive tender processes and will offer you an opportunity to express an opinion or whether you still hold a view that you held on the 22nd of January of this year. And I want to commend you, Honourable Minister, for having been, as reported, the first Cabinet Minister to openly support the appointment of a commission of inquiry into state capture. And you said this in relation to the involvement of the Guptas in Eskom. And this is what you said, and I quote, "I really hope the President appoints a commission at some point. It's necessary so we can talk a few things through," Brown said in an interview with the City Press sister newspaper report. I'm sure you remember what you said, and we commend you for that, Minister. What I'd like to know is whether you hold the same view, that there should be a full audit, forensic audit into all the tenders that have been issued by Eskom, because Eskom is in the media space nowadays for quote-unquote shady deals with various suppliers. Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
I repeat the point I've made earlier, and that is that if there's documented evidence other than the investigations that are happening at the moment in Eskom, we will happily do those investigations. The Honourable Member Singh asked me on the same day or the next week in a portfolio committee the same question. The prerogative, Honourable Member Singh, to appoint a judicial commission of inquiry rests with the President. The point I was making is that I would welcome an investigation, any investigation, into the allegations that are made in the State of Capture report. Thank you.
We now come to question number 64, asked by the Honourable Pikinini to the Minister of Economic Development. The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I have provided a detailed written reply to Parliament 16 days ago to a similar question on radical economic transformation, and I will therefore simply highlight a few key areas today. Government's economic transformation agenda is about ensuring growth that directly, sustainably, and expeditiously addresses the high levels of poverty, inequality, and unemployment in South Africa. To achieve this, the country needs faster growth, more inclusive growth, and jobs-rich growth, so that the economy can generate the resources to meet these challenges. Our work on economic transformation includes two key components. The first is structural, to grow the size and resilience of the economy, including through promoting entrepreneurship on scale, increasing the level of domestic and foreign investment in the economy, promoting beneficiation of raw materials into finished goods to break with the colonial legacy, strengthening economic links with the rest of the African continent, and at promoting higher levels of industrial innovation. Honorable members, the ratings downgrade recently is bad news for our efforts to grow the economy at a faster and more inclusive level. And thus we need to take steps to ensure we regain investment grade status from lenders and pursue a credible, bold, inclusive strategy in the interest of our people. The second component is to improve the participation of Black South Africans in the economy, including through increased equity by Black investors in the economy, worker participation on company boards and as shareholders in the firms concerned, job creation that can draw in and benefit large numbers of unemployed persons, promotion of small businesses in township and rural enterprises, and improvements in skills, wages, and productivity of workers. The high level of wealth and economic concentration, Honorable Piccinini, comes at a price to the economy. To build more inclusive ownership and participation levels, we have to address a number of issues. First, corporate misbehavior through cartels, price fixing, and market allocation that deter and inhibit new entrants from securing space in the economy. Second, corruption in the public sector that diverts resources away from our people and from urgent backlogs we must address. Radical in the context of economic transformation refers to ensuring that transformation that is bold, extensive, implemented expeditiously, and benefiting the widest number of our people. At an operational level, the department has implemented or supported policies and measures to promote bold and inclusive economic growth, which includes addressing transformation of ownership, management, staffing, and minimum wages in the economy. The work of a number of agencies, from the actions against cartels by the competition authorities, to the agreement to save thousands of jobs and open space for new enterprises in supplying spaza shops, to the 23 billion rand fund for Black industrialists set up by the Industrial Development Corporation, to the increasing number of Black South Africans who are making components for the national infrastructure projects. All these represent examples of action that is bold and radical, that is transformative, and that lays the basis for inclusive growth. Thank you.
The Honorable Piccinini.
Thank you very much. I take note that our people have been excluded from the economy as a key feature of colonialism and apartheid. Under democracy, the ANC government has begun to make changes to this, but we need to move with more speed and boldness. Minister, in your reply, you refer to the idea of a worker empowerment model as part of radical economic transformation. How this will work, and are there any international examples that can be given where workers are empowered?
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Piccinini. I think first we would make the point that there is no one-size-fits-all where we can simply replicate or copy a model elsewhere in the world. But having said that, there is indeed a very rich and deep experience of different forms of worker participation that is broad-based and that empowers large numbers of people. For example, in Sweden and Germany, you have the co-determination model where workers sit on company boards and ensure that their interests are represented, but companies are also efficient, dynamic, and competitive. In countries as diverse as China, India, Spain, and Italy, and many others, there are models of worker participation, cooperatives, worker cooperatives, or instances where workers co-own shares in a company that enable the benefits of economic activity to also reach workers. Indeed, Honorable Piccinini, not very long ago, I met with the CEO of a cooperative a worker cooperative in Spain called Mondragon, and it employs 75,000 workers, many of them in highly productive enterprises in the export economy. So we have many examples that we can build on. And as we ensure that our empowerment is broad-based, that more South Africans benefit from it, we can take note of these and learn very useful lessons that can be applied across large numbers of people. Honorable Speaker, very recently, we signed an agreement between my department and the International Labour Organization and the Government of Flanders to make available some resources for a social economy project that we hope can deepen these efforts to ensure ordinary South Africans benefit from economic growth and from economic inclusion. Thank you.
The Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Minister, it's quite clear that most of the black people do not have access to economy, hence a need for robust economic transformation. And of course, I think there's a need to do an investigation and of course to come up with a database so that we get a picture as to who owns what, especially in big companies. Is there anything from your side as a department that has been done so to do an investigation of the sort? So at least about 50 companies to see who owns what, and in terms of ownership, and in terms of shareholding, etc. And another problem that black people face in particular is the issue of equity. What is it that has been done by your department in that regard? Thank you very much.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Kubesa. I will try to perhaps start with the second question first. On equity, the Industrial Development Corporation has created a special fund, a Black Industrialist Fund, and it's put 23 billion rand up. And over the last number of years, the IDC has backed black South Africans to start up businesses, to buy businesses, or to acquire a share of business. In the next question that has been put to me, there is a part of that reply where I will also give a few numbers on that. On the first part of the question, Honorable Kubesa, that you've raised, which is access to the economy, you've identified specifically the issue of ownership. Of course, access goes beyond ownership, and it goes beyond ownership identified only through shares, but that is nonetheless quite an important issue. There's been a big debate and no agreement about what is the level of ownership by black South Africans, for example, in the JSE. And a number of studies have been done. My department may well look at this as an area where it can consolidate existing work on the macroeconomy. We have begun to look at sector-specific instances of participation by black South Africans, taking as an instance the clothing, textile and footwear sector, where in fact we're having deepening participation both by black South Africans and workers in the ownership structures. But no comprehensive database exists that everybody agrees is as a common reference point. So the debate about progress is bedeviled by the fact that parties in the economy fight over the data. They fight over agreement with the data. And I think your suggestion that perhaps we consider pulling a consolidated study together is an excellent one. Thank you.
The Honorable Kado.
Thanks, Speaker. Minister, in a previous reply to one of my parliamentary questions, you said that radical economic transformation was about, and I quote, ensuring growth that directly, sustainably, and expeditiously promotes national development goals, close quote. You also acknowledged, and you've reiterated it now, that the recent ratings downgrade was, quote, bad news for our efforts to grow the economy at a faster and more inclusive level, close quote. In light of these statements, what steps is your department taking to ensure that we regain investment grade status? And do you support the view of some of your colleagues in Cabinet, like the Minister of Small Business Development, that radical economic transformation must involve expropriation of land without compensation? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Cardo. At the heart of getting an investment grade for the country lies a credible growth strategy. So perhaps I should just start with the prior question. Why is it necessary to get an investment grade? As long as South Africa is dependent on capital markets, on lending money that belongs to others, they need to know, they want to know, are we able to pay back that money? And the rating gives an indication of the extent to which we can. So the credible story, the credible growth story in my interactions, and I'm sure the interactions more recently of Honorable Gigaba with the ratings agencies, it's clear that they look to a number of key issues. First, what is your growth stance? How will you increase the capacity of the economy to grow? And in that regard, there's a number of elements that we've put forward as government. They're about increasing levels of domestic investment, enhancing the skills base. I'm standing next to the Minister of Higher Education and Training, and I have to make that point. Ensuring that the national infrastructure plan is purposefully implemented and efficiently executed, supporting industrial activity across wide sectors of the economy. And recently, Minister Rob Davies announced the latest version of the Industrial Policy Action Plan, catalyzing what we can do in the farming and agri-processing value chain. And my colleague, the Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Zogwana, spoke earlier about some of the efforts in that regard. There are a few examples of what need to be done. Comprehensively and coherently, you'll find the ideas in both the 9-point plan and the policies that we've put forward as government. The second part deals with the issue of land ownership and more generally these areas. Now, of course, I can only speak about one critical issue, and that is from our vantage point. What is important is to have broad-based economic development. I remain convinced that the Constitution is robust. It's capable of ensuring that we are able to reach the kind of things that we need to do. If you look at the clauses in the Constitution, they give us wide latitude. The key issue has been whether in the pursuit of the constitutional goals of an inclusive society and therefore an inclusive economy, have we done enough? I want to cite the example of competition policy, recognizing time is limited, Honorable Speaker, where we've taken basically the same law that was in place since 1999 and ensured that it deals much more actively with issues of employment of workers, access to small businesses into the economy, actions against cartels and so on. We've got to be able to use the legal toolkit and the policy toolkit very actively to ensure that we have transformation in South Africa. Thank you.
The Honorable Mbata.
Honorable Minister, thank you, Madam Speaker. The definition of radical economic transformation depends on who wakes up where. Your president and your deputy president have two distinct definitions. Would you say the ones that you have just provided now are your own, not the government view? Because it is clear that your government does not have an idea what they are talking about. We would like to put it to you that maybe one of the things you need to consider, among other things, to disrupt the colonial trends of the structure of the economy and to disrupt the colonial trends of the ownership of the economy is the following: the expropriation of land without compensation, the nationalization of mines, the provision of free higher education until first degree. Would you agree that that is much more mass-based, much more benefiting real South Africans than what we are talking about?
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mbata. I feel like I am back in the Portfolio Committee since a number of members of the Portfolio Committee have asked me questions, so I feel very welcome with that. Honorable Mbata, I think you will find that the key elements that I have outlined in my reply, you will find them referred to in the State of the Nation address by the President. You will find them referred to in the parliamentary replies given by the Deputy President. You will find them in the manifesto of the ruling party, a copy of which I have brought with today and which I'm quite happy to share with honorable members. And you will find them in the policies adopted at the conference of the ruling party. So rather than any confusion about this, I think there's very clear elements to it. Radical economic transformation, inclusive growth has to have a number of components. Yes, those components means dealing with the structure of the economy. It is true that when we look at our history, South Africa and just about every other country on the African continent had economies that were developed to service the natural resource needs of Europe and the United States. More recently, there's a growing consensus on the continent that we need an industrialization strategy for the continent, where the iron ore, the coal, the platinum, all the minerals of South Africa is in fact beneficiated locally. That idea you will find broad consensus on. When we look at models to ensure that we in fact have wide benefits of this devolving to the South African people, there's a range of different models. I spoke earlier in relation to the question by Honorable Piccinini at worker empowerment models that have been developed elsewhere and that we can learn from. So I think there is a growing national consensus. It can't be business as usual. We need to do things differently, and ordinary South Africans have to benefit and participate to a greater extent. And it's not just the fruits of the economy. Many South Africans are potentially active economic citizens. They want to contribute. They want a job. They want to add value to the economy. They want to be entrepreneurs. But through a range of measures, some of which I referred to, they are restricted. The policy framework is about opening up the economy, making it more dynamic, making it transformative, and ensuring that it's broad-based and all South Africans benefit. Thank you.
Honorable members, we now come to question number 65 that has been asked by the Honorable Ranto to the Minister of Economic Development. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Competition policy, trade, industrial funding, and infrastructure development, the areas that Honorable Ranto refers to, are indeed central to our economic strategy. When companies want to merge or acquire other companies, we have focused our efforts to ensure that we protect jobs and our country's industrial capacity, that we promote economic empowerment, support small businesses, and open up competition in markets. This has led to multi-billion rand funds being set up by the private sector to promote localization and inclusion of black suppliers in their value chains. I can point to Walmart, Coca-Cola, and many others. We are cracking down on cartels across the economy, from fertilizers, bread, chicken, steel, construction, forex markets, car parts, fresh vegetables, and even bicycles. Massive fines have been levied, cartels have been dismantled, and markets have been opened for new entrants. We're now looking at economic concentration as a further area where the competition authorities can play a role. On trade, we have increasingly focused on expanding economic links with the rest of the continent, with more export of industrial products to the rest of the continent. And currently, honorable members, 250,000 South African jobs, direct jobs, are supported by our trade with the rest of Africa. The department a few years ago used the trade directive to put in place support for local foundries and steel companies to have access to scrap metal that is otherwise exported. This has saved a number of jobs, and it's a critical part of our industrial base. On industrial funding, we have directed the IDC to expand the level of industrial funding that it makes available. In the previous year, it had approved 14.6 billion rand of new investment. This is money by the IDC. To that, you need to add the investment by the private sector counterparties. But we've also looked at the impact of that investment on jobs, expanding factories, building solar and wind power plants, and supporting sectors like the food and clothing industries. In the previous year, the IDC funded black industrialists with 2.9 billion rand of capital. So out of the 23 billion rand fund, 2.9 billion rand has actually been allocated in a 12-month period to support black South Africans to make things, to grow things, to dig things. And if we add all black empowered companies, you get to roughly double that sum of money. On infrastructure, the department supports the work of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, the PICC, and works closely with a number of departments, provinces, and municipalities. Currently, more than 1 billion rand is invested every working day on projects in the National Infrastructure Plan. We have worked closely with National Treasury over the past few years to ensure sustainable funding streams for the roads, the port expansion, hospitals, schools, dams, houses, colleges and university facilities, as well as the energy plants. The increased investment in the National Infrastructure Plan, honourable members, has helped to avoid a recession in the South African economy at a time when many of our peers, other countries, were plunged into recession. In each of these areas, our goal is to work on improving employment and economic opportunity, and to work with other departments and spheres of government so that we integrate our various efforts for the benefit of our people as a whole. Indeed, honourable members, since the adoption of the new growth path in 2010, the economy has seen 2.4 million new jobs created. Thank you.
The Honourable Ranto.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for the comprehensive reply that you have given us. But Minister, the reality is that given the centrality of the industrialization policy and strategy, there have been serious challenges in this regard. How are we dealing with these challenges? Challenges that I think you know, and challenges that are coming every now and then in front of you. How do we deal with it as a country? Thank you very much, Chair.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Ranto, for your question. I would point to a few specific things that we've done. In the National Development Plan, one of the core ideas that has been put forward is the idea of building the capability of the state. And in the area that you focused on, the 4 areas, Honourable Ranto, that you focused on, in each of these areas we've worked to improve the capability, the strength and the performance of our institutions. Today, the South African competition authorities are regarded as world-class institutions, very often leading the field with their interventions and the public interest conditions that they've put in place. The Industrial Development Corporation is Africa's largest and most developed development finance institution. So those are some areas that we're working on. The second one is partnership with the private sector and organized labor. If we are to crack the challenges of employment and inclusive growth, we have to work very strongly to build a broader social consensus and a social pact that deals with issues of employment, investment, wages, and inequalities. In the discussions that has been held over the last year or so with a number of CEOs of large companies and leaders of trade union and trade union federations, increasingly we get the sense that that perspective, that view is shared much more widely, that we need this broad, integrated approach. Thirdly, the African continent remains a critical driver of South African development. And so we're working on getting a free trade area that would cover 26 countries and 600 million African consumers. And given the limitations on time, I can't go through each of the areas that you raised, Honourable Ranto. but they give an indication of the areas that we're focusing our work. And there are some great successes that we can highlight, some of which will be done by a number of ministers over the next few weeks in their budget votes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Honorable Atkinson.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Minister, infrastructure development is of utmost importance to most sectors in our economy, and in particular to job-creating sectors such as tourism and agriculture. There is a general feeling in the private sector that the government is lagging in this regard. Could you please be more specific about what new major infrastructure projects are being planned and executed, and whether there will be an increased allocation towards localized infrastructure spending going forward? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Atkinson, for that comprehensive question that you've asked. If I may start with the second part of your question, yes, indeed. We see the new traction that we can get, expanding the impact of infrastructure spending to come principally from greater levels of localization. So we've worked with National Treasury and the Minister of Finance over the last year and a half, 2 years, to see what new opportunities are there to deepen localization of component manufacture. And in fact, recently Cabinet looked at a report that identified a number of successes where we were able to do that. Going to the question of infrastructure and its linkage role to key sectors of the economy. And I want to focus, perhaps, take agriculture as an example of it. Agriculture requires a number of initiatives in infrastructure if we are to unlock the potential of small-scale farmers. They need water. So we have 2 major dams that are currently in the process of being finalized, and my colleague responsible for that will make the announcement in due course. But you also need the irrigation systems that underpin that. Connected to that, you need roads that enable small-scale farmers to get their products to market. The announcement in the medium-term budget policy statement last year by the then Minister of Finance about investment on the N2 Wild Coast Highway is absolutely critical, because if you can bring water and roads and some industrial development in the eastern part of the Eastern Cape, you unlock agricultural opportunities. Obviously, the relevant ministers will make the announcement as soon as it's ready, but we've worked hard to try to unlock that.
Thank you, Minister.
Tourism benefits similarly, but in view of the limited time, perhaps privately we can share that information. Thank you.
During your budget debate, Minister. Honorable Nkomo.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. To our Honorable Minister, noting that the matter of the progress that his department has made will focus on specific areas, I would just like to focus on 2 areas. Firstly, the competition policy. When one addresses the matter of SMMEs and takes note of the number of people that are kept within that frame, one notices that the growth to even a larger framework takes a lot of time. What is being done to ensure that people actually grow from where they are now to a higher growth? Secondly, on the IDC, especially with industrial funding, we always hear and people are always complaining that there's so much of funding in so many sectors, but it never reaches actually the people that need the fund.
If you can come to a question.
How much is advertised on those funding so that people actually can make use of those funds? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, House Chairperson. On the first question raised by Honorable Komo, I would want to illustrate by way of an example what the competition authorities are doing to try to ensure that small businesses grow. First, we have launched a market inquiry looking at the private grocery retail sector to identify what is it that limits small businesses, for example, from gaining access to malls? What is it that limits black South Africans from maintaining and expanding spaza shops in townships? So that's one initiative. In a recent settlement that the competition authorities entered into with the Coca-Cola company, we looked at spaza shops where Coke provides these fridges and coolers. And because these are supplied by Coca-Cola, the condition is that only Coke products can be stocked in it. And that limits the ability of the small spaza shops to grow, to use the fridge facilities to bring in additional product and expand what they can offer to consumers. So as part of the settlement, Coca-Cola agreed that 10% of the shelf space in all the Coca-Cola coolers and fridges would be available to competitors, that the small spaza shop owner has complete freedom in bringing competitors in. That will affect 117,000 spaza shops. So those are examples, just very micro examples of how we're going about opening this up. On the IDC, one of the challenges the IDC has had is demand for both knowledge and access to the resources is great. And it has a limited number of formal officers. And we've said to the IDC that we've got to get more road shows where it takes its message to local communities. So I hope Honorable Como, you will see more evidence of that in future.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sorry I had to ask you to round up. The time had already gone with about 2 seconds. The last question is from Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, let me start off by welcoming the success of the Competition Commission. And I think that goes a long way in addressing the issues of radical economic transformation. However, Minister, there are some other areas that seem to be neglected, and especially like you've spoken about the supermarket chain, the grocery sector. There appears to be a hell of a lot of collusion there, including in the motor vehicle trade. And I heard yesterday in a presentation by Treasury how government in negotiating were able to save over 200,000 rand on one particular vehicle. That clearly shows how these imperialists are exploiting our people on the ground, which is affecting radical economic transformation. Now, and added to that, Minister, is we talk about job creation in order to uplift the quality of life of our people.
Can you come to
South Africa imports 4 billion rand worth of surgical gloves and condoms. Why are we not looking at creating an industry in this regard so that we could be self-sufficient and export possibly as well? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, order. Can I advise you not to give long preambles to your question, because by the time you come to the question, your time is up. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, House Chair. And to Honorable Sheikh Imam, I think the point about the role of the Competition Commission and the authorities as a whole is well taken. Thank you for that. There are a few things that, that we can do through competition, but there are other things that we will have to do by building the capacity elsewhere in the state. The fact that the state overpays as grossly as the example that you've given, and I dare say that's not an isolated example, means that we've got to ensure much stronger procurement capabilities so that we in fact get some leverage from the enormous buying power of the state, both developmental leverage to promote developmental goals, as well as price leverage to bring down the price so that the taxpayer and the South African citizen gets value for money. But the second part is to ensure that entrepreneurs step forward, that there are in fact people who want to make surgical gloves and condoms, or whatever the example is, and that they have business plans, good business plans. We can try to help them to clean the business plans up, and that they put up credible proposals to development finance institutions. We're working now. Minister Zulu has put a lot of effort into trying to ensure that the Small Enterprise Development Agency and Small Enterprise Finance Agency can help small businesses to develop exactly those business plans. That's what's required, that we can use the combination of measures, competition, industrial funding, and other measures to be able to drive the economy, improve the efficiency, expand jobs, and promote development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Can we now move to question number 30, which has been asked by Honorable R.A. Elias to the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Minister. Maybe try another mic. Order.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. The former Minister of Finance announced in the budget speech on 24 February 2016 that he, together with the Minister of Public Enterprises, had agreed to explore the possible merger of South African Airways and South African Express under a strengthened board with a view to engaging a potential minority equity partner and to create a bigger and more operationally efficient airline, quote unquote. National Treasury and the Department of Public Enterprises jointly adjudicated the bids received in response to the tender that had been issued. Subsequently, government appointed Bain and Company South Africa Abacus Advisory to assist government in undertaking a comprehensive assessment of all options before reaching a final decision on the optimal ownership and corporate structure of the state-owned airlines. The work is complete, and the next steps is for government to review the options and recommendations to allow an informed decision to be taken on how to proceed, including alignment to the review currently underway on SAA's long-term turnaround strategy by CPERI. The review by government will determine whether strategic equity partners, if any, would become part of the ownership structure of the state-owned airline assets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Elias for a follow-up. The Mazambane name is not official. Honorable Member.
Kodwa ngiyayithanda lelo gama, so ningasabi ningalisebenzisa. Honorable Minister, I'm not sure why it is that I have the honor of asking your first question, oral question in Parliament in your new capacity, but indeed it is an honor. The question of SAA is a vexed one, and it continues to trade at massive losses. The current year is looking at 4.5 billion rand. That means just to continue trading, SAA looks like it's going to need additional guarantees. The Minister has just said that the private equity partner may not come to fruition. What this would require then, Minister, is either additional guarantees or a capital injection. What is the Minister's view about the state and the taxpayer having yet again to bail out SAA?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Mazambane. Chairperson, the statement by the former Minister of Finance on Budget Day 2016 indicated clearly that the decision on whether there would be a private equity partner was still going to be determined. In actual fact, what the budget statement said was it referred to a strategic equity partner, not necessarily private or public. And therefore, we shouldn't be presumptuous to arrive at a conclusion that the strategic equity partner would of necessity be private. But the issue that the honorable member raises is quite important. The continuous losses at SAA and the need to address the balance sheet of the airline and bring it back to health. The department, working with all the relevant stakeholders, is paying attention to this on a daily basis so that we can deal with governance issues, bring the airline back to financial health, and ensure that we turn it around and make it sustainable. Those plans will continue to be unveiled as we go about them. There is no single solution that is a magic wand that, if only it is carried out, will resolve the challenges that the airline is facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mente.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I'm glad that you are saying there is no single solution that will assist the issues of finances within SA and SA Express. And I want to put it to you that privatization is not a solution to that. And the radical economic transformation should not even indicate to you that you must privatize the airlines in South Africa, because that's no way to create jobs and to boost the economy of this country. Now, as the minister sitting here today, considering the reports of the bids that you have received, according to the tender which was issued by the previous minister, are you privatizing? Are you not privatizing? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, Chairperson. As my response indicated, we are now to review the bids that were presented and receive the recommendations from CPERI and other partners that are involved in assessing the challenges at SAA. And once that has happened, we will then make a determination on how do we move forward. As I indicate in my statement, the issue of the minority equity partner has not been determined whether they will be public or private. There are also opportunities available or options available for the minority equity partner to be a public entity. But that determination has not been made yet, and so we will make it at the relevant time. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Schlengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Minister, whilst you are working on the issue of whether to get an equity partner or not, SAA continues to lose money, as you've correctly pointed out. And one of the things which needs to happen is to rationalize the operations of SAA, looking at the routes of SAA. For example, why is there no SAA flight between Durban and Cape Town, giving BA a monopoly of that route of about 9 flights per day? And then we need to then look across the spectrum, drop the unprofitable routes and begin prioritizing where SAA can make money. And of course, that goes with the merger of SAA, SA Express and Mango. So whilst you are dealing with the equity partner, what other interventions are in place which are practical, sustainable, and not just injecting money and giving guarantees, but ones which give SAA the ability to be independent and progressive, particularly around the issues which I've highlighted of rerouting
Honorable
and the
Member,
issue of
your time is up.
the mergers which I've highlighted. Thanks.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Sheng. The issue of rationalizing the operations of SAA has been ongoing, and one of the measures undertaken has involved implementing cost-cutting measures so that the airline can be able to save on some of its operational spending and use that to invest in infrastructure and other strategic operations. The issue of rationalizing the routes is part of the long-term turnaround strategy. It will be considered together with that, both the domestic and international routes, as well as the regional routes, and the issue of the cost of fuel, how it procures its fuel, and many other items that form part of that long-term turnaround strategy. And there is a process underway by CPERI to review the long-term turnaround strategy. The conclusion of that will assist us to take decisions about the strategic issues in the airline. Meanwhile, we are paying attention to issues of governance, continuing to implement operational rationalization and other measures that will ensure that the airline remains afloat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you very much, Minister. And House Chairperson, thank you. Minister, I wanted also to harp on the same issue that the limitation of the routes for the SAA is creating a lot of problems. But over and above that, in trying to ensure that black people in particular get opportunities within SAA, and would you, Minister, in the foreseeable future, try to tell us as to who is really doing work within the SAA? Because while we still talk about problems and the long-term turnaround strategy, we need to know who is doing what within the SAA, who is getting jobs within the company as such.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Indeed, that information, Honorable Kubisa, can be made available upon request because it relates to the operations of the airline and it's information that can be available, providing, of course, that it doesn't create it doesn't cause problems with regard to competition in the airline and other factors. But let me say, the rationalization of the routes that the airline flies on depends and will be finalized in the long term once we rationalize our airline assets. It's therefore important for us to address the issue of the mergers of these airlines so that we can decide which airline and which metal is going to be flying on what route, whether international or regional or even domestic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We now move to question 70 asked by Honorable M.N.S. Manana to the Minister of Finance. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. As you are aware, the tax ombudsman has been tasked with reviewing the alleged prevalent and due delay by the South African Revenue Service in paying out refunds. As such, I am informed that 2 meetings have been held between SARS and the ombudsman and data has been provided to the ombudsman to facilitate their investigation. At this stage, it would therefore be premature to comment on any findings in this regard. I do, however, want to give the assurance that SARS is committed to facilitating all refunds that are due as expeditiously as possible. However, it must be noted that the refund process is subject to certain compliance interventions and follows a standardized process in line with legislation. These steps include, but are not limited to, a declaration by a taxpayer is subjected to an automated risk mitigation system. A declaration is reviewed where risks are identified or refunds are released within 48 hours, where no risk is identified, and when there are no outstanding returns or debt. Where risk is identified, a generic request for information from clients in support of their declaration is sent to the taxpayer. These requests are made in writing to taxpayers' e-filing account or registered address. Evaluation by SARS of the data in support of the declaration is conducted, and requests for further specific supporting documentation is sent to the taxpayer where deemed necessary by the auditor. If required, an adjustment is made to the assessment. All these reviews are conducted based on the risk identified by the system, and all procedures and legislation is adhered to at all times in dealing with identified cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. A follow-up by Honorable Manana.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you for your reply, Minister. Given the multiple reasons of the situation, would the Minister, in consultation with the SARS Commissioner, be suggesting any systemic change to what currently exists? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Manana. There has been a process of restructuring that has taken place at SARS with the intention to improve their systems and ensure efficiency in how they conduct their business. It is important for us to understand that at times indeed it may not be easy or even possible for a quick turnaround time in terms of claims, because a whole range of document assessment will have to be undertaken. But we are committed to continuing to improve the efficiency of the South African Revenue Service as one of the flagship projects that we have as a country in relation to many other countries that are failing to perform at the level at which we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Shibambo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Be rest assured, Mr. Gigabo, we're not going to ask you about Butle because
Order.
that is
Continue.
possibly a cheap question, cheaper than the monies that you've been giving here. Now, I want to ask a question which we asked yesterday about the balkanization of the revenue collector. On Thursday.
Order, honorable members.
Tomorrow, Honorable Chair.
Order, honorable members. I had already called order on that issue. Can we allow the member to ask a question?
Chair, so in overall terms, SARS collects like 1.3 trillion rands and then pays back in tax repayments about 222 billion rands. Now, the Border Management Authority bill, which he has been championing when he was a Minister of Home Affairs, will ultimately balkanize revenue collection and undermine the status of SARS as the sole revenue collector in South Africa. We have asked a question yesterday. I think that he was giving a nuanced approach and response. We want to get him to assure South Africa, are we still going to have one revenue collector in South Africa despite some of the attempts to try to balkanize and fragment the revenue collection in South Africa? Thank you very much.
Order, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Shibambo. There is no attempt to balkanize the revenue service, and there is absolutely no attempt to create parallel revenue collection services in the country. The South African Revenue Service and the National Revenue Account remain as the singular authorities responsible for revenue collection. The Border Management Authority is going to focus on, as the name says, border management. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Slengwa.
Thanks to you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Minister, one thing which the tax collectors are very good at is to actually collect. It's good when the money comes in, they're effective and efficient in that regard. But when they actually need to give back what they need to give back, the process is slow and tedious and tiresome, much to the anxiety of those on the receiving end. So it's a big brother, small brother syndrome. And that is where the problem lies, in improving the efficiencies in a manner which does not jeopardize the smaller brother. So the question, Minister, is that what consequence management is going to be instituted to ensure that those responsible for these delays are taken to task so that accountability can actually come to life through concrete steps of action as opposed to just papering over these kind of behaviors, because at the end of the day, it's the ordinary man in the street who's at the receiving end of these
Your
things.
time
So
is
consequence
up.
management, Minister.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Slengwa. Umhlonishwa uyazi nayo ukuthi uma umuntu ekuphi imali kumnandi mase kumele uyikhokhe uyibuyisele emuva leyo process ibabhlungu. But on a more serious note, Honorable Chairperson, the department continues to work with SARS to ensure that SARS operates efficiently and addresses the needs of its clients in a manner that is conducive to that partnership remaining strong and in good health. And indeed, we shouldn't presuppose that the instances where there have been delays in relation to the repayment of the people who deserve to be repaid are largely prevalent. To the extent that they exist, we are paying attention to those improving the systems and ensuring that through the systems and the institution, there is necessary consequence management. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Arlies.
Honourable Minister, you talk about the risk engine, identifying the risk, and then generic letters are sent out to e-filing. Minister, I wish you could read those letters. They are completely unintelligible. You have no idea what is being asked of you. So they really are not good. But Minister, you talk about the long delays not being prevalent. I put it to you that in fact they are prevalent. There are multitudes of complaints, and that's why we asked for the Ombudsman to consider that. I'll give you just one example, Minister. A vendor over the last 22 VAT periods has been audited 13 times, 13 out of 22. The average it's taken for the refunds to be paid is 44 days, and it has been as high as 104 days. Minister, would you agree that SARS is not performing adequately to regard to VAT refund? And if you disagree, how do you explain the high level of delays?
Ngiyabonga. Mhlonishwa Ngqongqoshe.
Siyabonga kakhulu nakumhlonishwa uLies. Okokuqala masigcizelele ukuthi uSARS uyawenza umsebenzi wawo ngendlela efanelekile ngoba lokho kuyabonakala kwinani lentela esilamukelayo njengohulumeni minyaka yonke ukuthi liyaqhubeka ukweva kuma trillion amarandi ngisho ngabe isimo somnotho singekho sihle. Lokho kubonakalisa ukuthi inhlangano yeSARS isebenza ngendlela efanelekile. Uma uyiqhathanisa iSARS nezinye inhlangano, ngisho inhlangano eziqoqa intela emazweni athuthuke kakhulu kwedlula thina, iSARS ibonakala isebenza ngendlela efanelekile futhi ifinyelela kubantu abaningi kunalabo ezinye inhlangano ezinjengayo zifinyelela khona. La eAfrika iSARS iyona ewungqa phambili ekuqoqweni kwezintela nasekwenzeni isiqinisekiso sokuthi isabelo sezimali sezwe lakithi sincike kakhulu emsebenzini omuhle owenziwa yiSARS. Uma kukhona inselelo ezifana nalezi umhlonishwa akhuluma ngazo, yizo lezi sithi njengoba sekuchaziwe ukuthi kube khona umhlangano phakathi kweSARS noOmbudsman lapho bedingide khona balicubungula lolu hlelo ngendlela enzulu, sizokwazi ke ukuthi uma sesuthola lo mbiko sazi ukuthi iziphi inyathelo ezinqala ekumele siyithathe ukuze sithuthukise indlela okusebenza ngayo ukubuyiselwa kwabantu imali zabo ngoba nathi kuyasikhathaza ikakhulukazi uma osomabhizinisi bengayitholi imali abayidingayo nabanye abantu abakhokha intela ngoba ukuze abantu baqhubeke nokukhokha intela ngendlela efanelekile kumele iSARS isebenze ngendlela ezokwenza ukuthi okokuqala imali zabo iphathwe kahle, okwesibili bakwazi ukuthi imali ekumele ibuyele kubona zibuyele kubo ngendlela efanelekile. Ngakho nathi lokho kuyasikhathaza siyimisela ukuthi sikuxazulule ukuze bonke abantu bagculiseke. Siyabonga.
Siyabonga Ngqongqoshe. Sesizodlulela ke manje kumbuzo 26 obuzwe ilungu elihloniphekile uhlengwa kuNgqongqoshe wezezimali. Ilungu elihloniphekile mhlonishwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. The official trip to United States in April 2017 was not a roadshow. We went to attend the IMF World Bank annual spring meetings. As such, we did not make any invitation to any people or groups to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hlengwa.
Ngiyathokoza uqosha ithuba mhlonishwa sihlalo. Mhlonishwa Ngqongqoshe, Fedusa, for an example, is on public record to say that they refused to participate in what you call now not a roadshow, whatever it is. Others may call it a junket if you want, but that trip. Now, be that as it may, whether they were invited or not, the perception that key strategic players in the financial sector in the country who must assist you turn things around, particularly with the added pressures in which you confronted when you assumed office. Do you think it is in the interest of progress to have such statements made? And if so, what are you doing to allay the anxieties of those players, such as we do, so that you can be able to cultivate a working relationship with them? Because for your trip to be marred by a cloud of such utterances is a cause for concern, and something needs to be done to salvage the relationship. So invite or no invite, that remains a problem if the people which you want to work with find themselves wanting to distance themselves from you. So siyafisa ukwazi ukuthi lesi simo ngoba umnotho uyantengantenga solungiswa kanjani ukuze nabazizwe beyingxenye yokuxazululwa kwale nhlekele ebhekene nomnotho waseNingizimu Afrika.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honorable Shem. It's important at this stage at which we are for us to continue cultivating strong strategic partnerships with business, labor, and other social partners. We are committed to ensuring that we've been engaging with various stakeholders at different levels to restore our relationship with them, to boost those strategic partnerships with them, and ensure that we can continue working together to address the challenges faced by the South African economy. It is my considered view that even if the economy were growing at 5% or more, and we had restored our investment grade, we would need to continue to cultivate such strong partnerships with different social partners for the good of the economy and country. And so it is important for us that we should welcome the commitment by various social partners to work with us in addressing these challenges. The commitment by business and labor, the commitment by social partners is welcome. But I also want to state it categorically clear. It is absolutely untrue that they were invited on this trip and that they declined participating in the trip. The trip, as I say, was to attend the IMF and World Bank annual spring meetings. And the delegation to those meetings is a delegation of the National Treasury led by the Minister of Finance. Thank you.
Order, honorable members. Honorable Shibambo. Order, Honorable Shibambo, are you taking your question or not?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, was it necessary to take your wife along? Is it a common practice with the previous ministers to take their wives along? Did she attend any official meeting? If she did, what value did she bring to people of South Africa? Because this is a taxpayer's money. The previous minister have pronounced on the court-crossing measures to the trips to overseas. So where is your wisdom on that one? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Honorable Chair, my wife did not attend any official meeting anywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. In respect of procedures, order, honorable members, can I please clarify? In respect of travel arrangements by ministers in respect of their work, that is covered in the ministerial handbook. But also, I would ask, no, honorable member, I hear he has answered the question. I was just helping to clarify for members in respect of the procedures. Honorable, is it the point of order, ma'am?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
He didn't respond to my question to say, where's the wisdom? Because the previous ministers have pronounced on cut-crossing measures of international trips. So when he's taking his wife to take selfies there, Where is the wisdom on that one? This is our taxpayers' money, Chief.
Thank you. Honorable Mainir.
Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Singh, is it a point of order?
Yes, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable
Yes.
Chairperson, the exchanges from that side of the House and this side of the House of Members doesn't augur us well as an institution. We want to hear the responses by the Minister and all members. So if you kindly exercise order.
Thank you. Order, honorable members. We do request members to be in order. As they exchange views, we always try and intervene to make sure that the rules of debate are adhered to. And indeed, we can appeal to members. Order. Honorable members, can we please be in order and allow the House to proceed? Honorable sweep of both the ANC as well as the EFF, can you please talk to your members so that they are in order?
Point of order.
Honorable member, can you please take your seat? I'm still addressing.
No, I'm just trying to assist
Order,
you,
can you please take your seat? I'm addressing the
I'm trying to
House.
assist you. There is one person who's causing havoc.
Honorable member, I have asked the whips of both the EFF and the ANC to address the issues. Honorable members, can we please not degenerate the House? Order, Honorable Minister. Can we please allow the whips to talk to both of you? And if you have got issues, please do address them outside of this House. Honorable whips of the ANC and honorable whips of the EFF, can you please talk to your members? Honorable Shibambo, what's the point of order?
Chair, the DSG of the EFF asked a relevant question about a Minister of Finance who must be responsible for cost-cutting measures, and he deliberately ignores that.
Honorable.
It's a fair question that must be responded to say that from the beginning, you're already disregarding one of the most fundamental principles of running a national treasury. What are you doing with regards to cost-cutting measures? Is
Honorable Shibambo.
So that we know that our monies are safe.
Honorable member, can you please take your seat?
Utilized thus far.
Can you please take your seat? Honorable members, order. When a question is asked to the members of the executive, they will answer the question. As they have done so, it may not be the way you want the question to be answered, but the question has been answered. And I think we need to appreciate that. If there is further concern, processes we know can be followed of how that need to be done to deal with issues in the House. Honorable Mainir.
Speaker, the fact is that if we marketed the Honourable Malusi Gigaba, the tagline would be Malusi Gigaba downgrade guaranteed. Because the real question is not who refused to accompany the minister, the real question is who actually accompanied the minister. Because you see...
Order. Order.
Point of order.
Honorable Tabashi.
We request that the member refer to the minister as Honorable Minister or Minister Kikaba. Thanks.
Order. Honorable member. Honorable Mainir, can you please address the minister appropriately, either honorable or Mr.?
I will do so. Speaker, the real question is who accompanied the minister. You see, because the minister was accompanied by his economic advisor, whose mad ideas would turn South Africa into Venezuela. And this on an international investor roadshow designed to restore confidence amongst investors in South Africa. The madness has to stop. And so my question to the minister is, will you fire your economic advisor? And if you will not fire your economic
your
advisor,
time is up.
why will
Honorable
you not
Minister.
fire him? Thank you.
Order. Honorable member, can we allow the minister to respond to the question?
Honorable Chair, the honorable member has asked me this question as question 30, no, as
26.
As question 26, and I will respond to the question at that moment. Thank you.
Point of order.
Order. Honorable Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Madam House Chair, ministers are accountable to this Parliament and must answer the questions put to them. We're not going to get to that question on the order paper. The minister knows that full well. What he's trying to do here is dodge questions on his first outing. What a shame.
Order. Honorable Member Steenhuisen. Indeed, as we all know, in terms of our rules, Rule 142.6, a supplementary question must arise directly from the original question and the reply given thereto, and may not constitute a new question.
Madam House Chair, may I address you, please?
You can.
In terms of the same rule, Rule 146.
Yes.
The original question was, with regard to his roadshow trip to the United States, who did he invite to join him on the trip, and what are the reasons cited by those who do not honour his invitation? Honourable Mania's question is completely germane to Section A of that particular question. The minister's been asked a question, the minister must answer the question.
Honourable Member, the minister has said in his listening to the question of the honourable member, it links directly to the other question. And you are right to say maybe that question may not be there at the time for him to answer, but it doesn't mean we can then substitute it on this question.
Madam House Chair, with
Yes.
respect, I think that you can't anticipate what's going to happen later down the order paper. A direct question that is germane to the question that was put to the minister, it's not a new question, it relates to who did he invite to join him on the trip. We all know that Mad Malakane joined him on the trip. He therefore must account for why he went there. I don't think that, Madam House Chair, it helps when the minister is being protected like this on his first outing. Let's hear from him. If he's proud of Mad Malakane, he must tell this House. Let him defend him. But he can't be protected by the presiding officers from answering questions put to him.
Order. Honourable Member, let's take 143, Rule 143. Replies to questions for oral reply which have not been reached at the end of the time allotted on a question day must be submitted in writing. So if the view is that that question is a pending question, we may not reach it in terms of oral reply, surely the Honourable Minister will respond at the time. Honourable Kubai.
Madam House Chair, if I may just...
Thank you very much,
Okay, if you
House
can
Chair.
take your seat, another member had raised the point of order.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I think firstly, in terms of the rules, rule of anticipation, the matter is before the House and therefore the member must wait for it. That's the first thing. Secondly, no, it appears, it applies, honourable members. You can't want to say when a matter is before the House and honourable minister is saying, the question is there, I'm going to respond to it. If honourable member thinks that the question is not going to be responded to, because he's saying minister shouldn't anticipate what is going to happen to the House, therefore he can't want to anticipate. But secondly, Honourable Steenhuisen has just called another person a mad person. Surely when we can't do that as Parliament. A member of us, no, colleagues, decorum applies to everybody. We have to conduct ourselves in such a manner that we are respected as well as members. Now, to also call people who are not here to defend themselves with names and call them mad, it's wrong. It's just morally bankrupt. We can't do that.
Thank you,
He's not
Honourable
here
Minister.
to defend himself.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Steenhuisen. The direct question that was asked by Honourable Mainir is indeed in the question paper.
But you can't let him choose when he answers a question. It's wrong.
The minister did answer and indicate when he will answer it. Do you want the minister to repeat what he said? Honorable Minister, I don't think they heard your answer. I don't think they heard your answer to the question. Honorable Mainir, can you please answer him again in the way you answered?
Honorable Chair, I indicated that the question Mr. Mainir was now bringing forward appears on the order paper as question 33, and I will respond to that question and address all of his concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Steenhuisen, I asked Minister deliberately because I think there might have been a confusion as to what he said. And I said so because he did not refuse to answer the question. However, he said the question is on the order paper as question 33, and he will answer it then. So it wasn't a protection of the minister not to answer the question, but rather the minister in his response, he adequately said he will deal with it there because the question is already on the order paper.
Madam House Chair, with respect,
Yes.
I don't think that the executive should be allowed to choose when and how they answer questions. We have rules in this House. The honourable member is within the rules to put that question. He has put it in terms of the rules. What you're doing is allowing members of the executive to pick and choose how and when they answer questions. Who is actually accountable in this House? It seems to me like we're accountable to the minister, not the other way around. This is wrong. This is a bad precedent. It's never happened before, and I think that we're going down a very bad path if we're going to allow members of the executive. The minister has a valid question put to him. He must answer it. He can't choose when he answers it.
Order, honorable members, once again, there is nothing in the way in which the presiding officers have dealt with matters that suggests any protection of the executive from answering question. The question was put, the minister responded. No, honorable members, I don't think we are correct to say what we're saying, even though not given an opportunity to do so. He said, I will answer the question where it arises. Honorable member, can we please not go back and forth on this question? And I will rule that we proceed. If there are issues that we think we need to address in terms of the rules and how one has presided, I will ask us to do it another time. For now, I actually close this matter and I proceed.
Chair, on a point of order.
On a point of order, yes.
I haven't spoken on this matter, Chair.
You can.
Thank you very much. Chair, if you look at question 33, and I hope I can find it now, the question relates to whether the minister has taken any steps to ensure that his economic advisor does not make any more public statements that are contrary to the government's economic policy, right? Nothing about the overseas trip. Then if you look at the question that was asked, where are we? It's about the roadshow. Now the question the Honourable Mania asked is why the minister's economic advisor went on the roadshow given his utterances in the public and undermining the government's financial policy. That's the first thing. Secondly, if there were two similar questions, Chair, the questions officer should have brought it to the attention of the two members that are the authors of the questions to get clarity to ensure that this particular situation did not occur in the first place, right? That's the second point. My third point, and the most important, is this book here, the Constitution, says that the minister is accountable to this House, not the other way around. And we have an obligation, and the minister has an obligation, a duty, to be accountable to this House. So I'll put it to you, Chair, based on those three facts, that the minister must be asked to answer the question properly. Thank you.
Honourable member, with due respect, having listened to you, as I indicated, if there is any erring in the manner in which this question has been handled, I would suggest that the parties concerned write to the Speaker and to the rules, and we can then deal with it then. But for now, can we proceed? Can we move to the next question, question 68? Oh, sorry, the supplementary, one more of it was Mr. Kubisa. Honorable Kubisa?
House Chairperson, thank you very much. Honorable Minister, before you went to the United States of America, and I've heard you saying that it was not a roadshow, it was just attending a conference. You held some meetings with some stakeholders, and by that time it was reported in the media that you were aware that we had been downgraded to junk status, but you had to hold that information because it was deemed confidential. That what was reported. Now, who did you meet within the business sector, and what is it that they added? Was it adding value, and what advice did you get with regard to the precarious situation, the crisis that we found ourselves in? Do you think that those meetings will help you in the long run? Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister.
But ngithanda indaba sihlalo kodwa kwakumedia lokho.
The time is up. I think the other issues can be dealt outside because they are not part of the discussion in the House. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Professor. We met with various business stakeholders in the country. We had meetings with BUSA, we had meetings at NETLEC, we had meetings with the Banking Association of South Africa, the CEOs of the 6 largest banks in the country. We also held meetings both in Cape Town and Johannesburg with domestic investors who hold 60% of South African bonds. And the issues that they raised with us addressed themselves primarily to concerns about whether we will achieve growth and inclusive growth in particular, whether as government we were taking all the steps necessary to ensure that we avoid any further downgrade and work towards restoring our investment grade, and whether we were going to address some of the issues that are regarded by investors as policy uncertainties, and what steps we are taking to build business and investor confidence. Both the meetings we undertook in the country, as well as the meetings with the ratings agencies in Washington, and with some of the bond investors in Washington and New York City, as well as Boston, addressed all of those issues, and we think that they added value to the extent that they drew our attention on the issues which are urgent that we need to pay attention to in order to address the situation, the economic situation in the country. But most importantly, we have to apply ourselves with a singular mindedness towards boosting economic growth, diversifying the South African economy, ensuring that we reduce our public debt and our reliance on commodity exports, and in the course of that, address issues of inclusion, bringing on board, both in terms of business, economic empowerment and job creation, those among our people who remain marginalized in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We now move to question 68, which has been asked by Honorable Makubele to Minister of Environmental Affairs. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Somlom. Indeed, a meeting of basic countries was held on the 10th and 11th
Order.
China.
Honorable Member, this is the Deputy Minister of Environmental Affairs. Deputy Minister, continue.
And
Deputy Minister, can you continue?
a key outcome of the meeting was the reaffirmation by basic countries on their commitment to the recent Paris Agreement. Under the United Nations framework Convention on Climate Change. All basic countries, and perhaps it's important to say which countries are these that belong to basic. It's Brazil, South Africa, China, and India.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Please continue, Honorable Deputy Minister.
This is a further demonstration of leadership by basic countries in the fight against the climate
Order,
change.
honorable members. Order. Honorable members on my left. There's a question that has been asked, and the Deputy Minister is responding to that question. If you follow the question on the question paper, you'll understand what the Deputy Minister is saying. Continue, Deputy Minister.
The Paris,
Continue, Honorable Deputy Minister.
The Paris Agreement was a hard-won achievement by the international community, which seeks to strengthen the global response to climate change in the context of sustainable development. The Paris Agreement framework provides a direction of travel to all countries and sectors of the economy in fighting climate change. The meeting also sought to communicate clearly that this fight against climate change is a global effort. The Paris Agreement began an irreversible process, and efforts resulting from it should not be postponed. This message was necessary in the light of recent global developments. The meeting also urged all signatories to the Paris Agreement to stay the course and maintain their support for the Paris Agreement for the good of all humankind and for future generations to come. South Africa can only make significant progress through working together with fellow basic countries in the formulation of policies and measures, and their implementation as well as other countries. To this end, the meeting indicated basic countries' willingness to work together with all other countries to promote low greenhouse gas emissions, climate resilience, and sustainable development. The meeting also expressed a view that when implementing the Paris Agreement, parties should exchange their best practices and cooperate to enhance actions progressively. South Africa stands to benefit significantly from the sharing of experiences and lessons learned. This will enhance the implementation of South Africa's National Response Policy on Climate Change and other relevant policies necessary for a just transition to a low greenhouse gas economy and climate resilience, South Africa as enshrined in the NDP. And just to add, Honorable Chair, that this initiative of these basic countries is actually an extra mile that they have taken in order to enhance the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. The Honorable Makubele, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, Honorable House Chair. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. Honorable Deputy Minister, we understand that South Africa is preparing itself to fully implement the Paris Agreement and the Marrakesh outcomes. Having ratified the Paris Agreement on the 1st November 2016, what strategic steps, therefore, have we taken in this regard thus far, and what does this mean for the most vulnerable to the impact of climate change in rural parts of South Africa? What assurances would the ministry like us to give to those in remote parts of our country who experience resource scarcity as a result of climate change on a daily basis? Whereas I do appreciate the response given. Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson.
The Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, House Chair. And thank you to Honorable Makubela for the follow-up question. Yes, indeed, we have, as South Africa, ratified the Paris Agreement. And that ratification already is a step in the right direction. And also to say that in addition, one other key step would be an increased support to developing countries by the developed countries, because we would know that as a developing country, we would need expertise in terms of technical expertise. We would also need assistance with regard to financial support. We would also need assistance in terms of capacity building. And just to say that, after all, developing countries have a duty to make sure that developed countries are assisted, more especially for them being the key polluters. The second one would be to encourage collaborated efforts from all parties. And another such step is the very effort that I've mentioned before, the effort of the basic countries coming up with this added benefit, either than the signing of the Paris Agreement. And on the issue of assuring communities, as government, we are committed to cushion all communities that are affected by climate change. Firstly, by...
Honorable Deputy Minister, your time is now expired. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Purdon.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Deputy Minister, a report released in 2014 by the environmental justice advocacy group Groundwork calculated that granting Eskom's applications for postponement of carbon emission reduction targets would result in about 20,000 premature deaths. In light of this damning revelation and the country's commitments to the Paris Agreement, is the Minister prepared to give a further postponement to Eskom in order to comply with 2020 standards? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chair. In light of the fact that as a country, we have committed ourselves to this Paris Agreement, I don't think it would make sense or justice to the signing of the Paris Agreement. We would want to hold all those who are responsible for the promotion of greenhouse gases to be held accountable. So I don't think, in my view or in the government's view, we would then try to exempt Eskom from the necessary steps that should be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Singh.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Deputy Minister, I think it was a significant step when this House unanimously agreed that we signed the Paris Agreement. Now, the Paris Agreement, amongst other things, commits member countries to the pursuit of renewable, clean sources of energy. That's one of the objectives. And now with the global green bonds market growing considerably, this is a viable energy option to fossil and nuclear energy. Why then is South Africa firmly rooted to the unaffordable nuclear option for energy generation? And how do we reconcile this position with our undertakings in terms of the Paris Agreement?
The Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Singh, you have just mentioned the issue of renewable energy. And I want to say that nuclear is renewable energy. It is indeed renewable energy. So why should we then exempt it from the rest of the energy mix? I don't think that is correct. It's just that we may not feel comfortable with it, but it does fall under the energy mix. Thank you.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Kalisa.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Minister, the implementation of the Paris Agreement and any other international commitments to climate change will require tough actions to be taken domestically. As things stand, South Africa is amongst the highest emitters of greenhouse gases in the developing world. Our intended national determined contributions prepared for the COP21 talks indicated that our greenhouse emission will peak between 2020 and 2025 and thereafter reduce dramatically. What specific action has your department undertaken to ensure that this becomes a reality?
The Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Again, as I have said previously, that the Paris Agreement means that we have committed ourselves in the reduction of greenhouse gases. All what I have outlined before, that are all the steps that we have taken as a department. I don't think we are out of order. We are in order in terms of making sure that, yes, we are amongst the high emitters, as you have said, but we are now tied down by the Paris Agreement. We will have to stick to that, and all other initiatives that we do will work towards making sure that we do lessen the greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
The next question has been asked by the Honorable Loliwe to the Minister of Labour. Question 72. The Honorable Minister.
Ngiyabonga sihlalo wendlu. I-productivity South Africa ikwazile ukusave imisebenzi for abasebenzi about 14,900 ngokwe turnaround solution yabo. Ama sectors that predominantly benefited from the interventions are agricultural sector, civil and construction, manufacturing, services, and engineering. And lama intervention enziwe ngo 2014-15, nango 2015-16, kanye no 2016-17. Ngiyabonga sihlalo.
Is there a follow-up question from the Honorable Loliwe?
Honorable Chair. Thanks, Honorable Chair. Honorable Minister, Productivity SA does not have offices in all provinces. How does the department ensure that its service reaches and benefits all the provinces? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Angibonge sihlalo, ngibonge umhlonishwa uLoliwe. Siumnyango wezabasebenzi si-establishe ama-regional structures okuyiwona azokwazisa izinkampani lezo ezisengxakini ukuthi zingaba ne-access kanjani ukuze sithole ukusizakala kulolu hlelo lwe-Productivity SA. Kanti futhi ngokukazwelonke i-Productivity SA Board izoba nama-road shows nayo ngokwayo ukuze icacisele izwe lonke ukuthi lolu hlelo ngabe lusebenza kanjani. So ayikho i-province ezoba nenkinga ukuthola i-information nanokuthola ukusizakala eduzane. Angibonge sihlalo.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Ollis.
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, Productivity SA had their funding cut for many months in the past financial year by the UIF and by your department, and they had to shut down programs and were unable to carry out much of their job-saving work and improving productivity in South Africa because their funding was cut. In fact, according to their report in our committee, only 95 million of their budget of 191 million actually was received by Productivity SA. Minister, how many jobs were lost that could have been saved if your department had actually given them their money?
The Honourable Minister.
Angibonge sihlalo. Mhlambe umhlonishwa okokuqala kuzofanele azi ukuthi i-UIF iwenza kanjani ama-transfers to Productivity SA. Umthetho uthi kofanele ukuthi bakwazi ukuspenda leyo mali esuke transferiwe before bathole enye ingxenye kufanele sise kubo. Ngesizathu sokuthi umthetho awuvumi ukuthi bazenzele ama-savings. If kuguti bathole i-profit, that profit must be transferred back to the UIF. So we have agreed that we are going to pay them according to the program that will be submitted to the unemployment insurance. Thank you, Chairperson.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Matiase.
Chair, South Africa has a potential for export-led economic growth. However, our government is not maximizing on this potential. The major challenge in this country is that SA productivity has gone up, and the production of goods and services has also risen as a result of import-dependent economy. And if we hope that we'll be able to improve the productivity of the country, whilst our economy is import-dependent, how can we expect that there will be job security, there will be improvement of creating more jobs, and ensure that the level of the country productivity is improved? Because we found maximizing on our potential for export-led economic growth is very unlikely that the economy will be improved. Now the question is, how dare do you hope to save existing jobs when the economy is not producing more jobs to an extent that you cannot even save those that are in existence already?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, House Chairperson. I think, Honourable Matias, you are confusing the two issues. Productivity SA is meant to assist those companies that are in distress. That's why we are funding them so that they can train and retrain those workers during that process when the company is trying to make sure ukuthi ibuyela esimeni esi-right. Production that you are talking about, it's another issue that has not part of this particular program. Yes, we have to export, particularly that program is under the Department of Economic Development. Tina sincedisa la kusuke kuwukuthi khona inkampani senkingeni in such a way that they want to retrench abasebenzi bese sithi tina ke let us intervene so that abasebenzi bangakwazi ukuretrench. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Are there any further follow-up questions? Yes, Honourable Member.
The Honourable Minister should ask for clarity in an event that she's in a state of confusion herself. If the confusion was not that clear, she must be honourable and decent to ask for clarity.
Do you have another question?
For more clarity.
Okay. Are there any further follow-up questions? If not, we will proceed to the next question. Order. The next question, question 42, has been asked by the Honourable Van Dam to the Minister of Communications. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
The question was, what is the projected budget deficit for the SABC as at the 10th of May 2017? And the other question was whether the SABC is at risk of not being able to pay any of its debts in the foreseeable future, and if so, why? The SABC's performance for the fourth quarter ended 31st of March 2017 shows an operating loss of about 509 million. It should be noted that the figures quoted here are unaudited. For the second question, the SABC will not have enough financial resources to meet its contractual obligations. And that's the sad state of affairs.
The Honourable Van Dam.
Thanks, Minister. I think the point needs to be made that it is an absolute outrage that your predecessor allowed the complete plunder of the SABC's resources and was merely moved to another department, and you're now left to clean up her mess. I think there needs to be action taken against the former Minister of Communications for allowing this. As it stands, the SABC is unable to pay local producers. It owes them hundreds of millions. It's unable to pay musicians. It is likely unable to pay staff, and it is really, truly a sad state of affairs. Now, we now know that you have received the official application for funding from the SABC Interim Board. I believe it was sent to you in the last couple of hours. How much money has the SABC applied for? And what form of funding is it? Is it a cash guarantee? Is it a cash injection that they've requested? What kind of funding is it? Thanks, Chair.
The Honourable Minister.
You see, Honorable Van Dam, I'm not aware that they have sent that to me in the last, no, it's true, in the last couple of hours. I really am not aware, otherwise I'll be able to respond to you and give you an answer to that. But what I will tell you is that we have been working with the SABC, a team that is composed of people from my office and also from the Minister of Finance's office. And what the Minister of Finance has said to us is that we would need to look at quite a number of issues before we come to him for assistance to either assist in ensuring that we're able to get funding from the banks or from other investors or even from the Treasury itself for that matter. And we've looked at quite a few things. We've imposed a moratorium on capital expenditure. We have ensured that everybody who is on paid suspension, those cases must be expedited so that a decision could be made whether or not they remain as employees of the corporation. We have decided to reduce the number of consultants that the SABC uses. And the sad state is that the SABC was using financial consultants when they have almost 8, if I'm not mistaken, chartered accountants in their payroll. We've imposed a moratorium on leave encashment, and this is something that I have not discussed as yet with my counterpart, the Minister for Finance. We're also looking at improving strategies on the collection of licenses. The collection of licenses is dismal, where we have 150 staff members that are responsible for this. And yeah, I said we'll deal with the issues around labor relations to ensure that sorry? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Check your email, it was sent
Now,
to you.
Honourable Member, I haven't recognized you. Please, don't just jump up and use the mic without being recognized. The next order, the next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Tseli.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. The public broadcaster has become a center for ideological battles since the dawn of democracy. And over the years, we have witnessed the deterioration of the status of public broadcaster as a result of many factors, including the one I mentioned above. Given the recent unfortunate events at the SABC and the fortunate environment to revive the broadcaster to its glory days following the appointment of the interim board, how does the Minister envision to deliver on the turnaround strategy of the broadcaster, and what are the critical immediate areas to address? Thanks very much.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. I think, Chairperson, I'd actually like to answer the question on the email. I think it is always courteous when people send you emails and you have many other things to do that they call you to tell you that they've sent you information. As it stands, I have not looked at my emails as yet. I have not, so as a result of that, I will safely say I have not received anything from them. I don't sit on the board.
No. Order. Just continue, Honourable Minister, with the follow-up question that was asked by the Honourable Member.
Van Dam, you did say that you will get me today. So the issue here is that the board is seized with developing a turnaround strategy for the SABC. That turnaround strategy has been finalized. We have not met with the board to discuss the turnaround strategy, the interventions that are required, both from me and the rest of Cabinet. So as such, right now, I cannot say what it is that I will be doing to assist on interventions that will come from the turnaround strategy once it's presented to me. Thank you.
The next follow-up question is asked by the Honourable Kawula.
Thanks, Chair. The reported crisis, Minister of the SABC, is as a result of deliberate mismanagement by the previous minister, the previous board, and the iron-fist management of Hlauti Motswaneng. What specific actions will you take to ensure that the dishonorable Faith Mutambi, the previous board, and Hlauti are held personally liable for bringing SABC into its knees? Now that the SABC is unable to meet its obligation, what are you going to do? Are you going to protect the SABC board the same way the previous minister protected Hlauti and the board? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I am not in the business of protecting anybody, but I'm in the business of ensuring that we work together to turn the SABC around. The interim board has been appointed to do exactly that. I will give them all the support that they need. I will not protect them, but I will give them support because I also need to ensure that for what I have been appointed to do, one of the things is to ensure that the ad hoc committee report is implemented by the board, and that I shall do. Thank you.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Singh.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Minister, it's quite shocking for us to learn that the SABC had a fourth quarter loss of 509 million. Now, if we take this over a year, it's almost 2 billion rand. What I'd like to know, has any exercise been done on the continued sustainability of a SABC as a corporation? And are there any moves to shut down some of the programs or some of the stations or some of the cost centers which are taking up a lot of money within the corporation? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. One of the things that we are doing is to check which of the television and radio programs are unprofitable, where we have suffered losses in terms of viewership and listenership, but also looking at ensuring that where we have suffered those losses, what are the reasons for that, and if we can turn around the situation. The turnaround strategy will address all of the issues that you're raising, but also looking at a different funding model to ensure the sustainability of the SABC. That's what we're also looking at.
We will now go to question 73, asked by the Honourable Mandela to the Minister of Mineral Resources. The Honourable Minister.
We have designed a program focusing on the growth of the sector through the support of new entrants, especially junior miners and black participants in the industry. We are working with the black junior miners to develop a strategy for their sustainable growth and inclusion in the ownership and operation of mining assets. The intervention has identified binding constraints to their growth and development, as well as key stakeholders in addressing these constraints, which includes the access to capital, access to geological information, access to markets, skill and technology. We are in the process of identifying viable projects for support, and we will heed the call to use all levers at government's disposal to ensure meaningful transformation. To that extent, we will ensure that government's efforts to address illegal mining and the rehabilitation of derelict and ownerless mines are used as opportunities to provide experience, opportunities and jobs for black people and entrepreneurs with a special focus on women and youth. Several youth in mining sessions was held in 2016, which were attended by over 400 young entrepreneurs. Follow-up sessions are planned for June this year. Holding procurement sessions aimed at the promotion of opportunities and enterprise development within mining industry. We are also aware of the importance of cadastral system and modern, complete and accessible geological information to the revitalization of exploration investment. To this end, we hosted through our Council for Geoscience the International Geological Congress in Cape Town, here in South Africa from the 27th August to the 4th of September last year, and have leveraged on that to design a 10-year integrated geoscience project to bring a multidisciplinary geological platform at the scale of 1:50,000 nationwide. In promoting and regulating the mining, minerals, and upstream petroleum sectors for transformation, growth, and development, in order to ensure that all South Africans derive sustainable benefit from the country's mineral wealth, progress has been made in the following areas. The department also acts to promote investment in the mining industry through the support of the Invest South Africa initiative. The one-stop shop investment. The one-stop shop will improve regulatory efficiency and provide multiple services to those interested in conducting business in South Africa from a single point. It has identified bottlenecks, remove administrative barriers, and reduce regulatory inefficiencies to make conducting business in the country easier. We are continuing to ensure that people of South Africa get the dignity that they deserve through the available instruments like the MPRDA. The DMR has been supporting Parliament in an effort to process the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Amendment Bill, which is on track to be returned from provincial consultation to Parliament. On the mining charter, the regulatory tool governing transformation in the sector, we have gained experience from the previous charters, and we have acted in this reviewed charter to address issues that affect effective ownership by black people and increase participation in decision-making structures such as at the board level.
The first follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Mandela.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Minister, does the government or the department have any program whereby it provides business funding for the youth in the diamond industry? Let me refer to a letter I received which reads as follows, I quote, "I would like to start a business in diamond processing for cutting and polishing diamonds. I am currently in training for diamond processing," close quote. This is a question asked by Olwetu Nkonyela. In this light, Minister, I'd like to know what radical measures have been put in place to reach out to our young people. Are these policies working? If not, what additional measures must be adopted to ensure that such young people as Olwetu realize their dreams? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Let me appreciate the letter from Oletu and the question from the Honourable Member. As part of support to junior miners program, the department working with junior miners themselves is engaging with stakeholders like IDC, PIC, and other funding institutions aimed at designing funding and technical support mechanisms to ensure that radical economic transformation and dreams such as Oluwethu Nkonyela and other young people are realized. The department is, through the State Diamond Trader, supporting a number of new entrants into the industry by providing training, mentoring, and facilitating access to diamonds as per its core mandate. As part of radical economic transformation, this program targets black entrepreneurs with a focus on women and youth. The training involved is designed to be a holistic approach which not only focuses on the cutting and polishing, but also other aspects of the diamond business and broader business principles. Also, as part of the training, trainees are placed in existing diamond cutting and polishing firms to get exposure to day-to-day operations.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Lorimer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Minister, given this government's commitment to carrying out regulatory impact assessments, and you've mentioned in your answer 2 parts of radical economic transformation, amongst them being the MPRDA and the mining charter, can you tell us what regulatory impact assessment have you done into these and to other aspects of radical economic transformation? Can you make it public if you have done such an assessment? And if you haven't got one that you can show us, why not?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, we do have impact assessments. What I've said what I can say is that both these policies are in the process of completion, including the mining charter, and part of the requirement before you complete, you need to have that impact assessment as to how are these regulatory framework going to impact in our economy, in our development, and the lives of our people. We have them, and there's nothing that we will really not want to share. Should a member want to look at it, we are transparent.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Estreisen.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Minister, you would agree that poverty and underdevelopment, not only in South Africa, but on the African continent, stands in stark contrast with the abundance of its mineral resources. The question asks what programs are in place to promote and regulate mines. We should rather be asking what constraints can be removed. Won't you agree, Honourable Minister, that the mining industry in South Africa requires assistance rather than unnecessary legislation? That thousands of pieces of anti-mining legislation is turning South Africa into the most hostile country to mining on the planet. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thanks for the question. As I engage with stakeholders in the sector, what they normally raise sharply is policy certainty. They want to be certain whether their investment will yield results at the end of the day. They want to be certain what is expected from them. And using these pieces of legislation that I've talked about, we are providing exactly that. And in our engagements with them, they are happy that that process is coming to an end. And in our engagement also, they are not raising what we are raising as an issue, but by and large, they want to be certain as to the direction this industry is moving.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Low.
Thanks, Chair. Mineral resources remain a strategic asset for South Africa's growth, particularly given that commodity prices are stabilizing and contributing to indicate that global economy is recovering. Unlike in the past, when commodity prices were high and only mining companies benefited, without paying more taxes or wages, and most of them stealing from people of South Africa through illicit financial flows. Is it not time that the government expropriate mines without compensation for meaningful ownership, control, and management thereof? I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Minister.
It is time for radical economic transformation. And in that radical economic transformation, we will ensure that we work with all the stakeholders in the sector to transform the sector in a responsible manner. We'll also use the state mining company to ensure that the state also plays a role in the development of its people in this industry, and ensure that the ownership patterns that are currently there are changed. It is important that we work together with all the stakeholders moving forward and ensure that we have a thriving industry. Thank you.
Question 77 has been asked by the Honourable Mafolo to the Minister of Mineral Resources. The Honourable Minister.
On a point of order, Chairperson.
Yes, what is the point of order, Honourable Member?
I just want to check, Honourable Chair, is it allowed to waffle like the Minister of Mineral Resource when you answer a question?
Honourable Member, we've passed that question now. We're now with question 77.
But he said nothing, he just waffled.
You should have rose when the Minister was replying. We've passed that point now. Honourable Minister, will you reply to question 77, please?
The department is consistently monitoring the implementation of social and labor plans, and that includes the following: human resource development for training of employees, learnerships, internships, bursaries, and skills development programs, management of downscaling and retrenchments, retraining and reskilling of employees, local economic development projects. In the last financial year, although the target of projects to be implemented were 120, 162 was achieved. In addition, there has been a contribution to skills development through bursaries and learnerships. The implementation of infrastructural development projects have contributed in the upliftment of mining towns and labor-sending areas as communities are able to access facilities which seek to address their basic needs. Some of the projects that were implemented in the last financial year are as follows: Computer and Science Lab in KwaZulu-Natal in Msunduzi local municipality. Construction of Mackenzie Street in the Northern Cape in a municipality called Gatelopele local municipality. Construction of Early Childhood Development Center in the Free State in Metsimahul local municipality. Construction of clinic and in Sirallaneng in the Northwest, Sirallaneng village. And housing projects in Emalahleni, Mpumalanga. Emalahleni municipality.
The first follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Mafolo.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Thank you, Minister, for the answer you have given. Minister, in terms of the project mentioned in your response, how do you measure the value of SLP versus the profit made by companies to make sure that they don't spend less than expected? And if needs be, should we be prescribing the mining charter the percentages they ought to be spending? Jaka re itemogela gore di company tse dintsi ga di spende tšhelete e ba tshwanetseng ba e spendele di community. Yaka re na le mine o bidiwang Namakwa ko Mamusa local municipality. Baagi ba teng ba go itse yang gore profit e dirwang ke mine o go ya go e lekana le tšhelete e tshwanetseng ba e spendela. Ke a leboga.
The Honourable Minister.
A ke lebohe mogaetsho. Ke hlalose fela ka bokgutshwanyane hore melao le melawana ena e re nang le yona motsotsong wa jwale ha ho mo e nang le sesupo sa hore re ka etsa jwalo ya ba re supa hore ba tlameile ba spende ho ya ka moo ba ntse profit ka teng. Le lengwe la mabaka ao re bonang hore dintho di nepahetse ka mokgwa di leng ka ona hona tje ke sesupo sa hore mohlang di-company di supang hore ha di a etsa profit re ne re kekebe ra ba le diprojeke tse yang setjhabeng ho lo ntlafatsa setjhaba. Ka hona ntlhakemo ya rona ke hore ba entse tjhelete kapa ha ba etsa tjhelete re hloka hore ba tswe ba ye setjhabeng ba lo etsa tsoseletso le tswelopele setjhabeng, mme ke ntlhakemo ya rona motsotsong wa jwale ho tswela pele, mme ke leboha potso ya hao e tswelang pele e ntshetsang pele.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Tembekwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson. To the Minister, ba entse tjhelete kapa ha ba etsa tjhelete. But clearly, mining companies, particularly those involved in illicit financial flows at massive scale, like Anglo-American, BHP Billiton, and criminal organization Glencoe, do not regard the social and labor plans as legally binding. Hence, they don't implement them with more than 48% of SLPs not signed. 72% did not engage community or government in housing plans, and a thorough review of SLPs by the Center for Applied Legal Studies based at Wits University found that most communities were unaware of the commitments companies made in the SLPs, and in almost all cases, these promises were not fulfilled.
What is the question?
The Minister, my question is, why is government not revoking licenses for mining companies which are failing to meet their SLP's obligations with immediate effect?
The Honorable Minister.
Angubonge lo mbuzo obuya kulunga elihloniphekileyo. We have taken a stance to align all our SLP's programs. We accede to the fact that our SLPs were not aligned. We are not only checking as to whether the SLPs has been implemented, we are also saying you have companies that operate in the same community, 2 or 3 of them, doing small projects which are different. If you align projects, you also open up an opportunity where companies can come together and say, in this town we need a dam. Combine their budget and build a dam that is a necessity for the communities. Going forward, we are agreeing with the companies that we need to monitor once we have agreed in terms of which SLPs are going to be implemented. Not only that, to cover your question of, at some point, communities do not even know what type of projects are happening in their area. There is now a necessity that before SLPs can be implemented, they are to be published in 2 languages. It could be English and the language that is commonly used in that particular community, so that our communities are also taken on board. Thank you for the progressive question.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honorable Minister, usually mining companies that are always in the main or in public domain are those that either in Gauteng, Northwest, Mpumalanga, etc. And the various cases that are reported, not good though, but there are other mines where there is a lot that is happening that is not reported. In your tenure, as minister, have you come across cases where there are incidents like accidents that happened in the mines that are not reported, and whereby those mines are not giving any assistance to mine workers? Because I understand, for instance, there are mines in KwaZulu-Natal. They may not have been in the public domain, but there are issues there. Have you come across issues that are not reported at all? And what steps have you taken to ensure that those issues are dealt with? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Let me thank you for raising that question. Indeed, we have come across a number of incidents that have not been reported. And we have since taken actions. You'd remember that when I arrived here, we took a stance that if there is any incident in the mine, we go to that mine and see for ourselves. And we have been consistent in doing that. As a result, there has been some changes in terms of our personnel, where we think we are not happy because we have inspectors that should ensure that any incident that is not reported gets reported to us by the department. And those mines that have not reported, there are sections that we normally ensure that we have an action in terms of the events that are there unwanted by the department. Sections like Section 54, which is the ultimate end, which says, let us stop the work in that particular area where the incident has happened and the incident is unwarranted. We are progressing well, I must say, in our meetings with our stakeholders to ensure that all the incidents are reported and workers in South Africa are treated as human beings.
The next follow-up question is to be asked by the Honourable Esterhuizen.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Minister, the mining industry has ploughed millions of rand into the infrastructure development wherever they develop, but only the big groups. My question, sir, is why is mining licenses still being issued to politically connected people who bring no corporate social development agenda or conservation plans to the table? The result being continued downward spirals and environmental degradation with huge socioeconomic consequences that the big mining companies must try or being left trying to uphold. Why in these cases are our communities allowed to get steamrolled by these fly-by-night operators with protection from your department, DMR, without these communities having any input or benefits in the process? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Baie dankie vir die vraag. We make sure that all the people of South Africa are treated the same. Because you'll remember that our constitution says the mineral resources of South Africa belongs to all the people of South Africa. Whether you are a politician, if you want to go to business, you must declare properly and do business the way our legislation is. One of our policies is to ensure also that the ownership patterns as they obtain in South Africa are changed. The majority of the South Africans are not part of the ownership as it currently it is. So there's a need for us to transform. But in our quest to transform, we are also keen and energetic to deal with those who come and want to be in the sector unscrupulously so. As we give our mining rights, we're working on a system called SAMRAT, which can be accessed by anybody. Our records are there for anybody to be accessed, but what we want to achieve is to ensure that we transform this economy. We ensure that our money in the country goes and develop the people of South Africa at large.
Honourable members, we now come to question number 50, asked by the Honourable McKay to the Minister of Energy. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, House Chairperson. The question that has been asked by Honorable McKay, it relates to Eskom, and I want to indicate that Eskom has not done anything outside the law in terms of the process that was followed previously, and what they have been acting upon is the mandate given to them by Cabinet. So nothing wrong has been done by Eskom. They have been following the process as per the mandate given to them by Cabinet resolution. Thank you.
The Honourable McKay.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, that somewhat deviates from your answer in the Portfolio Committee last week, where you indicated that the process that you had decided upon around the procurement actually deviated from the process that Eskom itself had followed. So I'm a bit confused by the contradiction that you have now raised within the House. Perhaps you would like to clarify that. But more importantly, Minister, we all know that the Integrated Resource Plan is the very foundation for all energy planning within the Republic. How do you propose that Eskom has acted lawfully when it has based its plan to procure nuclear on an outdated plan, on the 2010 plan that was supposed to be updated by 2012, again in 2014 and again in 2016? The current IRP clearly states that nuclear will not be required until well into the 2030s. So what is your justification and what is Eskom's justification for procuring nuclear when our own energy policy draft document clearly states we do not need it? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, House Chairperson. I think there's a confusion. Honourable McKay, what Eskom has done has issued request for information. Request for information as per Section 34 determinations, which were issued by Minister Peters, Jumat Peterson. So there is nothing wrong that they have done. That's what I said. Firstly, in terms of the process, for you to be able to proceed with concluding the funding model and the cost, they needed to enter into that process. So it doesn't say that we have entered the procurement. It's to request information so that you can conclude the process. We need to go back to Cabinet and say this is what we have based on the request of information. That was prior to the court judgment. Now the court judgment has given to say the determination, Section 34 determination that have been issued have been found to be wanting, they've been set aside. We, as I said in the committee, we are looking at the court judgment. We should be able to pronounce on the outcome and our decision going forward before the end of this week, so that we can give clarity in terms of the work. That's what we are saying. No contradiction, nothing deviates from what I said into the Portfolio Committee. I'm still sticking to that process. The process, what Eskom was following, it's as per mandate of DOE given to them as the preferred procurer going forward. But for you to finalize that process, you needed this process that they have embarked on. So I hope we have clarified on the matter. We don't have confusion. Request for information is not yet procurement process.
Honourable members, the time allocated for questions have now expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed in Hansard. The last item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. The Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, we move that this House notes the resolution adopted by the National Assembly on the 13th of September 2016, which established an ad hoc joint committee on ethics and members' interest, and a similar resolution adopted by the National Council of Provinces on the 20th of September 2016. Secondly, that this House knows that the committee was initially set to report on the 10th of November 2016, and a resolution extending the deadline to the 31st March 2017 was adopted by both houses. Thirdly, that the House notes the joint rule 138(5)B which provides that an ad hoc joint committee ceases to exist when the date for completion of the task has expired. And D, note that the House knows that the committee has ceased to exist after the 31st March 2017, when the date for the completion of the task expired. That the House resolves, subject to the concurrence of the National Council of Provinces, to re-establish the ad hoc committee on ethics and members' interest with the same composition, membership, mandate, and powers as its predecessor. The House instructs the committee to incorporate in its work the proceedings and all the work of the previous committee. And lastly, that this House sets the deadline by which the committee must report as the 31st of August 2017. We so move, House Chair.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? Yes, Honourable Member, there's an objection. I now put the question.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, we just need clarity. Where is this coming from? Was this in the Chief Whip's forum or programming? Because we just don't have a clue of what this is.
Honourable Chief Whip, would you like to respond to that, please?
Definitely, the Chief Whip's Forum did speak to this matter today, and we were empowered to bring this matter to this House. Thank you very much, House Chair.
I see some of the Chief Whips are nodding their heads in agreement, so I'll put the question. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.